Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Great to have you on Friday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal is in. We are loaded up today. Some sports and also remembering those who gave their life for 9/11. 19 years. It doesn't seem like it's been 19 years. And we'll have a special story from a survivor that spoke in Nebraska. Had a chance to interview him a couple years back. Sujo John, he and his wife both escaped the tower South Tower, before it came crashing down. So that's coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. We'll talk some Husker football. Derek Peterson will be with us from Hail Varsity. Jeff Mall, Lincoln Convention and Visitors Bureau. Mr. Jeff will tell us what's happening around town this weekend. You can wear red too. A lot of throwback games going on, man, and we want to see you down at the rail yard. Things will get kicked off down there. A double feature for you beginning at 5:30. You've got Iowa, Nebraska, the Kenny Bell game, and the Des Moines Pearson-L game, quite honestly, from 2014, and then the 94 Nebraska-Colorado game follows that. So good times down in the rail yard. Be safe, of course. Bill Dolman coming up in 1 hour, and then we'll set the scene for tonight's high school game. Thankfully, I'll be able to call the football game tonight with Lincoln East and Norfolk.
Well, let's not count your chickens before they're hatched.
Well, I mean, I assume I'll be able to successfully navigate from where we're at here in Lincoln to Seacrest Field for the 8 o'clock kickoff. A week ago, I'm breaking a phone call off to Elijah. He puts his Superman cape on and says, "Yep, I got you. You take care of your beat up body and I'll do the show." So John Gingery's coming up at 5:40, head coach for Lincoln East. You can join us. Dial us in at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Email Chris at HailVarsity.com. Follow us. Give us a follow on Twitter at Schmidt_radio or at Herbal Essence. So the news today, a couple of things. We are anticipating a vote for sure this weekend or maybe Monday from the Council of Presidents and Chancellors, a revote. Could things get into action and return to play competition? We'll have their presentation. So we'll tell you about that. You also have the Nebraska Attorney General throwing his hat into the ring when it comes to compliance. And this is interesting. And you have the office of Doug Peterson, the Attorney General for the state of Nebraska, sent a letter to Commissioner Warren today. And it's really about compliance. And it's one thing for, and I'm not scoffing at the lawsuit for the Nebraska football players. The Husker 8 are very vital to this fight, to this push to get football back for the Big Ten this fall. And they have gone about things in a super mature way. They've gone about things in a very legally responsible way. And Nebraska has gotten some movement from their players with this lawsuit. There has been some discovery, right? You got the fact that you had an 11-3 vote. That was divulged because of the Husker 8. You actually got a number. Now you have the Attorney General for the state of Nebraska notifying Commissioner Warren that, look, the conference appears to be out of compliance with the Nebraska Nonprofit Corporation Act, and that is pretty important here because you have the power of the state. All right, the power of the state of Nebraska. It's not a lawsuit. This is the state of Nebraska. They are able to instruct the Big Ten officials to provide documents and records to determine if they've operated in compliance. If you're going to be part of Nebraska, and if Nebraska is going to be part of the Big Ten and you're a nonprofit, and you're making boatloads of money, Nebraska's part of that money-making process, and you're not taxed, are you in compliance? Are you operating in compliance with Nebraska law and their own? Are you operating within compliance of your own governing documents? So I don't want to get super convoluted here or glaze you over, but this is very. It's a pit bull bite, is what it is. It's a strong jaw here. The Big Ten folks can look down their reading glasses. The presidents and chancellors and all the legal scholars and law experts can roll their eyes at the Nebraska students, right, and say, well, you want to comb through our documents because you don't like a decision. We're going to thumb our nose at you, and we're going to be evasive, and we're going to dig our heels in, and we're going to be silent, and we're not going to give you information. But when the Attorney General for the state of Nebraska steps forward and has legitimate basis to request all this information on the face and in the realm of compliance, that you're following the law in the state of Nebraska, you can't dismiss that. You can't ignore that. You can't not answer that if you're the Big Ten. Is it a technicality? Has this been an issue? I think back to the movie Casino, all right? And you got Robert De Niro's character who's kind of running the casino, but technically he doesn't have a gambling license, so he's not supposed to be running the casino. And he ticked off one of the local politicians, and one of the local politicians went down to the gaming board of Nevada and said, you know what? Is this guy even got a license to have a casino? Is this guy legally able to operate and run? And he had two twins that were heavy set, looked at each other. And, well, I don't know. Well, could you kindly get on that? He had this cowboy from Nevada, and they were out of compliance. I mean, they were mobbed up, so yes, they were out of compliance. But the point is, and I'm not saying I'm not going criminal negligence here. I'm saying the fact is there are checks and balances, there is compliance, and you need to be compliant if you're going to have an entity like the University of Nebraska operating with a nonprofit Power 5 league.
I don't claim to be a legal aficionado. I took one law class in my time in college. And
it's common law.
Yeah.
Same here. So, I loved it, but I'm no Jack McCoy. That's why I check out Vince Powers or talk to my buddy Garth.
Yeah, but this feels like it's got more weight than that Husker players lawsuit. They're asking for pretty much the same thing. You can't
dismiss this.
Yeah, no, you can't dismiss this. It's from the state of Nebraska. And it feels like it's being almost swept under the rug because you have all the other news within this past week. You've had Ryan Day's statement. You've had the talk, there's going to be a vote this weekend, all of this.
James Franklin putting the conference on blast, yes.
But this lawsuit, or not even lawsuit, it just feels like it's got more weight. It's from the state of Nebraska. You would assume that the Big Ten, even if they don't get a ruling that they'd like here, would appeal it into a federal court, and it'll go up the ladder.
I think the way the Nebraska 8 presented things and who they've partnered with prevents it from going to federal court. So it's going to be a Nebraska judge that has to dismiss. I think they made this is what Vince was telling us. Nebraska made the necessary adjustments. This is a couple of weeks ago, where I don't think the Husker 8 lawsuit can get kicked to federal court. They prevented that.
But this one can.
Possibly.
Correct me if I'm wrong there. I'm not 100% sure. As I said, not a legal aficionado. But I believe this one, being from the state of Nebraska, could therefore then climb up the ladder up into federal.
It could, but from a state standpoint, they're questioning the Big Ten's actions. You've been conducting business in the state without either being registered or failing to maintain registration. And when it comes to, are you even following your own bylaws? You've got Peterson's letter in light of recent allegations as to the Big Ten's deliberative process regarding whether to cancel, modify, or postpone the 2020 football season. Our office hereby seeks additional information regarding whether the aforementioned deliberations were conducted in accordance with the requirements of the Nebraska Nonprofit Corporation Act. So these decisions you made, do they match up and are they legal to do within being a nonprofit organization that is operating in the state of Nebraska. So here's what you got, and the information is being sought by September 21st. All information, opinions, reports, and statements that went into the conference's decision concerning the 2020 football season, the current bylaws, and any amendments and appendices effective January 1st. I think this week the Big Ten took the bylaws down off of their website. I think I remember reading that. A list of current directors, including the Big Ten Council of Presidents and Chancellors, who voted 11-3 to postpone the season. All documents governing the deliberative process leading to the decision to postpone fall sports. That includes, but not limited to, the Big Ten Conference Handbook, all meeting minutes reflecting the deliberative process, documentation of the meeting with specific dates, times, places, and type of meeting. Was it special? Was it an annual? Was it quarterly? And who attended? What are their titles? And if it's a special meeting, identify who called the meeting and what authority did this meeting take place under. So it's all the things that, honestly, the Husker 8 did not get with their lawsuit. They got some discovery, but they were unable to get minutes or recordings or notes from the meeting. So it's just digging a little bit deeper with the power of the state of Nebraska and the Attorney General, the top law enforcement officer in the state of Nebraska, asking for this. It's not 8 college students that are ticked off they're not playing ball, and they have every right to do what they've done, but this has a little more hammer to it. This is a second or third cherry on top of a very rugged week for the Big Ten and Commissioner Warren. And the other thing, too, to think about here is just what is moving forward here that makes you feel good, maybe a little bit better about October football. And we've waffled on this. We've gone back and forth, and it's looked bleak. And the commentary from Bill Moose he's been very straight up with where things may go. I mean, it's just been a very exhaustive process to push things. And right now, you're going to have the Council of Presidents and Chancellors here from the Return to Competition Committee, okay? And you've had X number of coaches lose it on the commissioner because of the communication process and the fact we're down to almost out of time, all right, to get a fall season in. Why has there not been progress made with trying to acquire rapid testing? It's had to come from the president, or you've used faulty medical information. You've been sitting on your hands since summertime, it feels like, with this. It's like your mind's already been made up. You're not going to play ball, when it's okay to not guarantee that you're going to play ball, but to tap out this soon like they did with everyone else moving forward was the wrong call. And you need to re-examine that. And this thing's been a fluid situation in the world because of COVID, not just with athletics, not just with football. So it's really important to have the right medical presentation this weekend or Monday. That's it. Pete Thamel from Yahoo Sports. He is reporting the revote is coming in the coming days, and it's going to stem around the medical presentation that is put together by the league's Return to Competition. UNMC's been a voice in this. I think from a momentum standpoint, if you have Ohio State kind of taking the baton right now, that would be good. And Ohio State is your heaviest hand. They are your national champion contender, but they're also your best dude, and they want to play ball. So they need to, their medical experts need to lead the way. That voice, along with clearly Ryan Day's voice and James Franklin's voice, and hopefully Jim Harbaugh and the athletic director of Michigan, all those voices are hopefully providing sound input. And then Ohio State Their medical experts can present this benchmark plan. And now that you have rapid testing that you're going to be able to get a hold of, and Nebraska's teamed up with UNMC for 15-minute tests for athletes. Pac-12's done this. Big 12 is doing this. You're going to be able to chop a couple of things. One, you need to be able to scan and keep an eye on the myocarditis. That's one question that the Council of Presidents and Chancellors are freaked about, which I get. The other side of this, Elijah, too, though, is your contact tracing, right? If you have a test 30 minutes before kickoff, you're going to know who's infected and who's not at time of kickoff, so you're not having to play this catch-up game of contact tracing. And you can test, and Nebraska's going to test both teams.
My question is, you got the schools like Nebraska that can handle this. What about the schools that might not be able to get testing stuff like this? I'm talking Rutgers, Maryland, Illinois.
Honestly, I'm not saying it's like you and me ordering a large pizza from Lazari's, but these are highly funded medical research institutions. They can get it if they want to.
Yeah.
They got to make it a priority to get it.
But if they don't make it a priority, will they be willing to vote on a season and say we can let these other schools that have the capabilities go forward?
They need to let those who want to play opt in. And we'll see if that's it. Who knows if it's all for one, all 14 got to play or not.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Great to be with you. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. Bill Dolman's coming up, and then we talk to a survivor from the South Tower. He and his wife able to escape. They were on near the 70th floor, and we'll hear Sujo John's story in 1 hour. I'm going to bring in Husker Insider and Hoopster. We love checking in with Derek Peterson at Dr. PDHV on Twitter. Are you on the road, or have you stopped for a bowl of soup somewhere out west?
Do people stop on long trips for bowls of soup?
I'm saying, have you arrived at your destination to eat, my friend?
No. I still got about an hour ahead of me. So.
All right.
But I'm out headed to Kearney.
Yeah, well, you know what? You're going to check out Heinrich Haarberg, and that'll be outstanding. Let's talk with about Haarberg for a second. And I know he's the quarterback commit, but have you had a chance to see him before, or is this kind of a return visit?
Well, this will be the plan is to cover every game for them this season, so this will be the third straight week that I've been out to watch them. Before this season, I had only seen tape. I hadn't been out to the Kearney to watch him for his junior year. But, yeah, this will be the third game this season that I've seen him.
So what's the wow factor like with him?
I mean, he looks the part. It was funny. I had a conversation with Greg Smith, and we were kind of talking about Thomas Fedoni and just the kind of mercurial talent that he is. And I had made the comment that, because I've been out to Kearney practices, Kearney Catholic practices, their coaching staff and the administration over there has been great and given me some access. So I've watched him in practice, and the team around him is good. They are, I think, ranked second right now in Class C1 football in the state. So I don't want it to sound like I'm saying that he's just leagues above the rest of his teammates, because I don't think that's the case. I think they're good, but it is funny when you see a 6'5" quarterback out here on a practice field that isn't much, just kind of like throwing lasers from one side of the field to the other on a rope. He looks kind of like you just kind of dropped him in. He doesn't look like the kind of quarterback that you would typically find middle of the state, Nebraska. So. And when I made that comment to Greg, he was like, "I kind of feel the same way with Thomas Fedoni out at Lewis Central. It's a testament, I think, to Nebraska's evaluation chops as a coaching staff that they found this kid. But it's not hard once you start watching him to realize that he's got some stuff to him. He's tall, he's lean, but he's like sneakily athletic. I don't want to say that because it carries bad connotations with white guys, but he's like, he can move and he can escape the pocket. Last week he had a it was either last week or the week before. I think it was last week. My days are running ago. I'm sorry. It was a fourth down, a key fourth down, and he kept the read option and he scampered for 20 yards. And it was a key play. It was a big play. It was the right read. He made some dudes miss. He's got that to his game, but he also is a quarterback. He is a stand in the pocket and deliver dimes. Like I said, across the middle of the field. He can throw it. He's got some arm strength. He had a 42-yard pass in their opener against Wood River that was right on the money on a corner route across to the right side of the field. He's talented, and it doesn't take long into watching him to realize that he is a serious quarterback. He's not, I think it's, since 2003 that the last time Nebraska had a scholarship quarterback from the state. Like, he's not kind of a feel-good story that's really not going to be competing for a job at Nebraska. I think he's got a real opportunity to be a guy that is a starting quarterback for the University of Nebraska. He's got a lot of development left to go, and that's kind of Mario Verduzco's MO, but I think that they are excited about him, and it's been nice to watch him. And I'm curious to see how he bounces back this week, because the opener, it wasn't much of a test for him. His evening was done by halftime. They were up 52-0. And last week, it was kind of a struggle to put the ball in the air, as some of his receivers were dropping passes that he was putting on. But he made a couple errors in judgment a handful of times. He doesn't have a turnover yet this season, which is nice. But I'll be interested to see how he bounces back tonight, because conditions aren't great right now, and that's kind of across the state. But we'll see. I think he's a good quarterback, and I'm excited to see what he does tonight.
Derek, he didn't have the best week through the air last week, but you mentioned that read option where he got the first down. Is he able to impact the games in other ways than just with his arm?
Yeah, absolutely. He's had a couple of those runs, and two, he, I think if I remember in my notes correctly, he was 9 for 21 last week, I think is what I had him down as. But it was the third quarter. He escaped a collapsing pocket and moving to the right side, moving to his right, he found a receiver downfield for a crucial third down pickup, and that helped. They scored on that drive, and that helped them kind of extend the lead. Their defense really put the game away for them, but the offense kind of needed a little something to get itself going, and there were plays that Harvard made scrambling that were impressive to see. So yeah, he can absolutely impact the game outside of just standing in the pocket and throwing to open receivers.
Derek Peterson's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Well, you're in Kearney tonight. Make sure our old boy Doug Duda buys you a sandwich or something. All right, our friend out at 1460, 1550, our affiliate out in central Nebraska. So, Dr. Petey, do you feel better about this weekend's prospects with a revote, the representation of medical, or the presentation by the competition committee when it comes to medical info, the rapid testing? How's the wind blowing for you with October football?
I mean, I think you have to feel better with the direction that things are moving, because a couple weeks ago, Kevin Warren put out a statement and said our decision to postpone won't be revisited, and now they're having another meeting where potentially a vote will be on the table. There's clearly been some movement, and the hoopla that has been made through various channels over the past weeks have clearly had an impact on the Big Ten. I'm not sure if it's the lawsuit or parents or just immense pressure from the public that has, or maybe it's medical reasoning that has forced them to kind of, I won't say do an about face, but at least open themselves up to the possibility of revisiting football in the fall. I still think that in October 10th start, or whatever the date that's been floated out there, I still think that's like the least likely option. But it's been reported that that's something that they're talking about. You saw on, was it Thursday? The Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star reported that Nebraska had secured access to some rapid testing, some rapid COVID testing for its athletes. I think that's a crucial first step. Now, it doesn't solve the Big Ten's problems that Nebraska can do this. It's going to need all 14 schools to have that kind of testing capability to be able to test a guy the morning before a game and have the results back. Everybody needs to have that ability. It can't just be a handful of schools. But I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think you saw Nebraska make a push to show publicly, hey, we got this. You know, we have this available to us. We have these protocols that we can put in place to make football a realistic possibility here. I also think, you know, we had an NFL game for the first time this season last night. We're going to have NFL games this weekend. We're going to have college football games this weekend. There's been games that have been canceled already, but I do wonder if maybe the Big Ten gets through this weekend, and then there's some kind of revisiting of a vote early next week when they can see, okay, the teams that played Saturday, they have test results back now from after those games. And maybe that influences their thinking. I'm not sure. But, yeah, to answer your question, I think you have to feel good about the direction it's trending.
With Day and Franklin coming out and being critical on the communication and leadership, and I don't know how chummy the Zoom calls were this week with the coaches, wanting answers, trying to say, look, my kids are asking for you know, the why question, and we don't have an answer. You've not given us an answer. I mean, this has been a high level of increased pressure on Warren, and now you have the Attorney General sounding off with requesting documents and compliance if you're a nonprofit within the state of Nebraska. So that's a whole nother bag of worms or can of worms, better say it accurately. And so, I mean, I think, though, with Day and Franklin, I mean, Ohio State's got to now kind of lead this narrative because they're the big dog and they are a championship contender. If things get approved, they got about a minute and a half here, Dr. Petey. If things get approved, let's just make this jump and say everyone's got rapid testing. Nebraska will be able to test their kids and whoever's coming to Lincoln. Maybe they take the tests on the road. I don't know. But Nebraska's got the ability to test both teams. Do you see an 8-game schedule or a 8-game plus one non-conference? I mean, what's the number shrink down to get in that window for the CFP? Is it just 8 or could you get 9 in?
I don't know if you can get non-conference games still. Those might be out the window at this point. You can try and get it. It depends on when you start, because if you want to play for the college football playoff, like the Ohio State, if they have a team that is, you know, realistically a shot at getting in, they're going to want some time off to prepare for that, like they would in a normal season. I don't think Ryan Day would be like, sure, we'll go play a college football playoff game, you know, a week after our season ends, when the team that we're playing, let's say Clemson in this scenario, the team that we're playing has had, you know, the normal 4 weeks or whatever it is to prepare for this game. That's not
fair.
You're going to get blown out and embarrassed, but it's not fair. Yeah. If you can get 8 games, I think one of the other issues, it's been reported that there might be some opt-outs from schools, that even if the Big Ten moves forward, there might be some schools that don't want to play and might sit out the season. I'm really curious about that. I don't know how that works. If everybody's calling for Nebraska to get kicked out of the conference for wanting to play, what happens if there is a Big Ten season and there are schools that don't want to play? Like, is there the same kind of feeling towards those schools? Is there the same kind of, like, breach of contract talk around those schools? I don't know. It'd certainly be interesting from a financial standpoint if there are teams that decide to sit out the season. What happens if they're able to play and let's say like Minnesota and Purdue and Michigan or something like that sits out the season? That's not reporting. That's just guessing. Do they still get the cut of the pie at the end of the year? And if not, like, where does that extra money go? Does it get redistributed to the teams that play it, or does it just go to the Big Ten?
We'll questions for sure. We'll tackle those. Stay safe and healthy, and safe travels to you. Thanks for jumping on with us, Derek.
Thanks, man.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio listen?
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Big thanks to Derek Peterson. Bill Dolman's coming up. Jeff Mall, Lincoln Convention and Visitors Bureau. And this from Adam Rittenberg a little bit earlier today. One of the points made, the Big Ten Medical Subcommittee really has one shot to sway the presidents and chancellors towards resuming play. It's not going to be revisited over and over throughout the fall. So the presentation, you got to nail it. That goes without saying. Now, you do have this going on. You've got a lot of frustration with the changing timelines from coaches. Originally, it was going to be January, then Thanksgiving, now mid to late October. Don't kid yourself. You've got some schools that haven't had kids on campus. You've got some schools that haven't picked up a football in 2 weeks, Minnesota. And you've got some schools that are just flat out distance learning right now, and that's Wisconsin. They're on a 2-week don't show up on campus. So that's where we're at. 466-3776. 466-3776. 800-825-5865. We're efforting Jeff Mall, but try Ducell or no?
I've tried both his work and his cell, so.
Okay, well, we'll see if that happens. So let's spend a minute here back to what Derek was kind of wrapping up with. If it comes down to the fact there are 14 schools and you get 9 that say, yeah, we want to play ball. Yeah, we can secure rapid testing. Yes, we can secure the EKG cardiogram scans for myocarditis. You're going to have some schools that are going to say, we're not capable of getting the materials. You're going to have X number of schools in the Big Ten try and figure out a way to not play. Either they're not ready, they're not down with it, they're still scared medically, whatever. I think what you're going to I've been wrong. I've been right and I've been wrong a lot on this because it's changed every other day, all right? What I do believe is this. I think when push comes to shove, you've got the Attorney General involved with Nebraska. You've got a high-ranking member of the Ohio gubernatorial circle, state government, threatening the nuclear, we're going to sue you, Big Ten button. I think when push comes to shove, you're going to have a handful of Big Ten schools that will be allowed to play. At worst, that option needs to be on the table, as long as they meet health and safety protocol standards. It make no sense because Rutgers and Minnesota and Maryland say, look, we can't get access to testing, or we just don't feel safe, or we don't want to go, man. Fine, don't. Get me 8 teams, get me 9 teams. I'm good. Put a schedule together and move forward. We welcome in Jeff Mall, Lincoln Convention and Visitors Bureau. You hear him with First and 10. And Jeff, my man, you've got a plethora of choices this weekend to catch Husker football, don't you?
Yeah, Chris, it's great to be on the show. And, we're super excited despite not having football, man, to talk about cityofred.com. It's a great website now that is beginning to populate itself more and more every day with options to watch the game through the Big Ten Network and at the bars and restaurants across our community. Get incredible room specials in our hotels across the community, Chris. We're just trying to create a virtual game day, and we're pretty excited about it.
Well, we're super familiar with our friends at The Graduate. Last 3 years, we've done live shows down there for Home Football Fridays, and it was always awesome, and it will be awesome again. But got specials going on with the Graduate. You've got a number of places to get a pint, get some wings, and hey, let's beat Purdue, or let's beat Missouri, or let's check out down at the Cube. You got Colorado, Nebraska, and Iowa overtime Nebraska in 2014. I mean, there's a lot of games to check out. That virtual allure is very real.
It is very real, and I will tell you this. I mean, I remember when the whole pandemic started, and we were all stuck in our homes watching old clips of football games and baseball games. There just wasn't the same feeling when I'm in the basement of my house or I'm with my family watching a football game from back in 1994. But, man, if I can get around a bunch of other people wearing red with some Husker spirit, a bar at a restaurant or a hotel in Lincoln, there's just something that gets a little bit closer to that game day experience. And you're right, the folks at the Graduate are doing some fun things. Our friends at the Kindler Hotel, the Courtyard Marriott, everybody's starting to step up with these reasons to bring people back into Lincoln, because you know what? People that had a football ticket were going to be here anyway on game day weekends. Let's just get them here anyway and enjoy the spirit that is Husker game days in Lincoln.
Tell us a little more about the idea. A couple minutes here, Jeff, behind cityofred.com and just what all folks can go kind of search out on the website.
You know, cityofred.com was a brainchild of Tom Lorenz at Pinnacle Bank Arena and Todd Ogden with the Downtown Lincoln Association. The question that we asked each other is how do we have football with football? So let's say we have games at Memorial Stadium and we're only seating a small percentage of people, and all these people are across our community wanting to have fun. What can we do? Well, the scenario that we were forced upon was to do football without football, and that's really the premise of doing something like this. We all need it emotionally, Chris, but, you know, the most important thing right now, I think, for all of us is to remember our restaurants and retails have really – the environment has really kind of fought through some desperate times early on in the pandemic. We now shift our focus a little bit to our hotel partners across the community that are faced with 3 months of significant losses without that game day traffic. And we really want people to get out, get a room, whether it be a staycation or a night out on the town on a Friday or Saturday, and, you know, be a part of that Red experience. And it's really just kind of create a connection with folks that we're not giving up at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, and we don't want people to give up out there either, that there is the ability for us to share that passion with one another.
That'd be an awesome weekend, man. You book a room, you go watch a game, and you can check out cityofred.com to do so. And so many different games on at various locations that are, and it's fun to rewatch. And, you know, Jeff got about a minute here. We may hopefully get some good news Sunday or Monday here with a potential revisit and revote with the Big Ten.
Right. Yeah, I'm starting to feel that same thing. And in the things that I've been, hearing and reading out there, is it certainly sounds like there could be some things shaken loose. And boy, do I hope so, because to have some football in this community, Husker football in October or November or whenever it may be, the sooner the better. It's just going to be an amazing experience. I'm getting chills just talking about it, Chris. I can't wait to get back with you, buddy, and start talking about Husker football again and getting us right back where we belong.
No, absolutely. Well, touch that horseshoe above your office door. All right, we'll get there soon. And cityofred.com is where you check it out. And Jeff Mall, Lincoln Convention and Visitors Bureau, doing a great job, not only with the hotels and restaurants and local business owners, but a one-stop website for you to check things out. Jeff, we'll talk soon, and thanks for making time today.
All right, thanks for the time. Have a great weekend.
You too. There he is, Jeff Mall with us, Lincoln Convention and Visitors Bureau. Check out cityofred.com. And that sounds like a plan, man. Go check out a ball game. Check out the Cube, of course, down with Hale Varsity and Hurrdat. We'll wind down hour one coming up.
And now, back to Hale Varsity Radio.
Bill Dolman's coming up. Quick reminder about drinking and driving and buckling up. 70% of people in fatal crashes in Nebraska are not wearing their seatbelt. If used properly, a seatbelt can reduce risk of injury and fatal injury up to 60%. Your best defense is in any crash is buckling up. Brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. 10 minutes away, Bill Dolman. 5:25, our conversation with a survivor from the South Tower on 9/11, Sujo John. Coach Gingery, Lincoln East, coming up at 5:40. John is on hold. John is in with Hale Varsity Radio. John, go ahead.
Well, I know on the 25th of September at 2:30 in District Court, Susan Strong's court, they're going to make a decision whether to go forward with the lawsuit. But that brings me back to what you were talking to the doctor about, comparing if you were going to play in the playoffs and not having enough time. What type of product is Nebraska going to put on the field if they could play October 3rd like you wanted to, when they're not on the training table and all these other schools have been going full bore, like they're going to have a regular season? Isn't the Big Ten going to be really far behind in terms of not within their conference, but getting ready if they would play for a national championship, the winner?
I think it's been uneven, but I think there are some programs that have been preparing every day like they're going to play. I think
that's good.
I think there are some that haven't. I think there are some that have. And as soon as you get the thumbs up from the Council of Presidents, I think you open the training table back up clearly. And you're not so far removed. I mean, Nebraska's been practicing 4 times a week. They've not been able to smack each other, but it's not like they haven't been working out and staying as up to speed as they're allowed to. Now, if you're Minnesota and you just got back to work yesterday, that's kind of on you.
And John, I'd also say a bad product on the field. I don't think it's going to be a bad product on the field, but even if the team comes out and they only had 3 weeks of practice or whatever it is, a bad product on the field is better than no product on the field. For me, for the players, for everyone.
I'm just saying it makes sense to play now, not in January, because what are you playing for?
Well, nothing. Your point is this: you don't want to go look like Navy in Game 1 either. I mean,
Well, we'll be playing with our own conference, so it won't be that bad. By the time we decide a winner of the Big Ten, they would be in pretty good shape to play for a national title, I think.
Yeah, you're going to ramp up. You just gotta see how it rolls. John, thanks for listening. Thanks for the phone call.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care, and be healthy.
You too, man. Take care. Yeah, look, it's going to be different. It's going to be awkward, but you're not going to be that far behind if and when the SEC kicks off here the 26th. A week, 2 weeks maybe. Maybe it's October 17th. Maybe you get a warm-up game October 3rd. It really kind of comes down to what is your plan amidst COVID and shutdown, a.k.a. postponement, been like. And Nebraska and Coach Frost and his chief of staff, and they have had plans in place to at least stay after it, as is Ohio State.
If I'm the one making the rules here, I'm going to let them do a red-white scrimmage 1 week before Game 1. And that lets you test out your fans in the stands if you want to have those as well, and all your protocols. And it gives you a chance to warm up and get one game-like experience, then get into the season at the end of October. That's how I'd do it.
Well, and there are some potential cancellations. It isn't going to go smoothly. So someone may want to pick up a game. There's why maybe you have that 8+1 idea. Bill Dolman's coming up.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. John Gingery, Lincoln East head man, coming up in 30 minutes. A survivor from the South Tower. As we remember 9/11, Sujo John coming up in 20 minutes. We welcome in the Pride of Fairbury with NBC Sports. He had to wear his parka this week. Bill Dolman is with us. Billy D, is the snow all gone?
Snow's all gone, and I think it's supposed to be like upper 80s tomorrow. It's been kind of a crazy weather week out here in Denver.
We are getting 70s tomorrow, and I think Sunday 80s Monday. So we haven't had snow, but it's been a wee bit chilly. It's been fall football weather, man, and we may have better news. As you've kind of observed from Buffland or Donkeyland, whichever you prefer, what's your take been on the week? Not only with James Franklin and Ryan Day, but Now you have the Attorney General for the state of Nebraska checking. I'm thinking of Al Pacino and Scent of a Woman. I'm out of order. You're out of order. I'll show you out of order, man. And the old compliance check, Billy D.
I'm reading and hearing, and I'm wondering, is Nebraska trying to get kicked out of the Big Ten? And then I'm going. But here's one thing, okay? I want to take you back to November 20th of 2010, all right?
Okay.
Because if there is football in the Big Ten this year, you know damn well that there's going to be 16 penalties for 145 yards that are going to be marked off against Nebraska, okay? So whoever's playing Nebraska, whenever the season begins, better decline every penalty thrown against the Huskers, because without Nebraska, there is no possibility of football at all in 2020. So when they decide to go, all yellow flag against the Huskers, then everybody needs to, especially at Ohio State, at Penn State, because all of a sudden Ryan Day and James Franklin are like, oh, look how tough these guys are. Meanwhile, Nebraska's over here going, hey, we're the ones, like I said many weeks ago, we're the ones who brought them in on a wheelbarrow. And you all were like amazed at what we were doing, us hayseeds in our overalls. But it's Nebraska who has been the power in the Big Ten for the past, month plus now?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, well, look at Ryan Day, look at James Franklin, and Scott Frost is going, what about us?
Frosty's going, you're welcome. That's what he's doing.
Right. I mean, exactly. And Nebraska right now, and I said this many weeks ago, and Nebraska has been the leader in the Big Ten. And that goes I shouldn't say goes in the face of, but it is in a conference that has no administrative leadership right now. Let me take it back even further. When the Big Ten Network first came on the air, this is give you an idea of the power of Jim Delaney when he was the commissioner of the conference and arguably the most powerful man in all of college sports. When the Big Ten Network went on the air, I did some volleyball and some other events for the network in its infancy, right? And they were following in the model of what we had done at the Mountain West Sports Network, which was the first ever collegiate sports television network. So we may not have been in the headlines, and many people may have forgotten about the Mountain, but the Mountain is a little bit like Scott Frost in Nebraska. We took all the arrows, and Big Ten Network, has gone on to great things, but it was the Mountain that established it. Well, Jim Delaney, looked at what we had done for the Mountain West, which enjoyed its best success back then. And in those early days of the Big Ten Network, I can remember that there were grumblings throughout the conference that this is not going to work. This is the bad idea. We got to be on ESPN. We got to be on Fox. We got to, this Big Ten Network is not going to work. And I'm talking about powerful basketball coaches within the state of Michigan, okay? And they were trying to get the Big Ten Network basically shut down early on. And Delaney said, shut up. This is the way we're going. This is going to work, but everybody's getting behind this. And all of those coaches and all of those administrators who were nitpicking like BYU did at the Mountain, they were shut up quick, and look where the Big Ten Network is. Delaney had the power to tell. It didn't matter who it was. It didn't matter what coach it was. It didn't matter what athletic director or president. Remember, the commissioners really operate at the behest of the president. It's much like an NFL or NBA commissioner does. It's the owners who select the guy who's going to take the arrows for them. And so Warren is basically their face, their front man. But Delaney back then had all the power. And right now there is no administrative leadership in the Big Ten. And the leader in this conference, without question, is Nebraska, even though Day and Franklin right now are the ones who are getting the headlines.
Nebraska's kind of just been the old reliable fullback that's going to go murder a linebacker and gets the running back into the end zone here.
No, but again, you've got these lawsuits that are out there. I think there's supposed to be some discovery like tomorrow or something for I think the players. And now you've got the Doug Peterson thing on the 21st. I mean, these people at Michigan and, I shouldn't say Ohio State and Penn State because, they're like standing right behind Nebraska, but they're going, we got to get rid of these people. we have got to get rid of these guys because they're screwing it up for all of us guys wearing bow ties. and it's not working out real well.
That's about right. Okay, so Nebraska is partnered with UNMC. They're going to have rapid testing, not just for Husker players, but also the teams that Nebraska is playing.
Again, Nebraska is at the forefront of this whole thing, and this is athletics aside.
Yeah.
Back when this thing first started making headlines in the early part of this year, and even you go back to Ebola, it was always what's going on at the the UNMC. Nebraska was always at the forefront of that, and once again, the nation turns its eyes to what's going on at the UNMC again. And I said this many weeks ago on the show that people in the Big Ten ought to look to Nebraska because the medical center is in the backyard, and damn well the administration and the athletic department are all in cooperation with the UNMC. So Nebraska, as a state, as institutions, they're at the front line of this thing. And I look at this Michigan president. People keep talking about him as, it's like, well, he's not signing off on it because he's an epidemiologist. Okay, well, it seems to me that his full-time job is that of being an administrator to the University of Michigan system. And he's probably not on the front lines of what's going on.
It's not answering Jim Harbaugh's phone calls. I know that.
Well, yeah, but so he's reading reports that are probably coming out of the UNMC. But Nebraska has that resource in its backyard. They know exactly what's going on. I'm sorry if I'm going to say his name wrong, but this Scott Kepsel, who's going to head up this thing in the Mushroom Gardens. It just seems to me that this guy at Michigan ought to be going to Nebraska like, well, what are you guys finding out?
He doesn't want to play.
Right, well, exactly. And I mean, I don't understand how Michigan can have, a large amount of high school football that's been blessed by the governor, and now you've got, two major institutions that don't want to play. And I know we got the big game with Central Michigan coming up on Saturday, but it's just really kind of odd to me.
That was a week ago. They just reinstated high school ball. The Michigan president barely. I mean, this summer, Bill, he was about ready to get rigged out of office. I mean, they had a no confidence vote going for the guy.
But again, everybody keeps saying, "Well, he's an epidemiologist." Okay, well, great. But it would seem to me your full-time job is running an academic institution. Nebraska's got people who are on the front line of this pandemic, not just for what's going on within our borders, but for the entire country. And you would think that Nebraska's got a pretty good plan in place. That's another thing that I heard in the media recently was that not every school in the Big Ten has a plan. I'm like, what? How is that possible this far into this thing? Who was not at the forefront and it didn't have foresight at all these other institutions? They're just, nodding along. And the Big Ten, in some respects, reminds me of the old days of the Big 8 and the Big 12 when it was, Nebraska and Oklahoma basically running the Big 8 and Nebraska and Texas and Oklahoma running the Big 12. And then you had, the other conferences just, like little birds in a nest waiting for, Big Bird to drop the worm and just nodding in agreement. And nobody's, standing up for themselves. And that's the way it seems to be in the Big Ten is that you've got, I said this before, what have you heard from Minnesota other than dropping sports now? You don't hear anything really from Indiana.
Their Board of Regents voted down today, but they didn't like the plan that was presented, and they're ticked off that they've even got to be bothered with it. They said, well, some of the regents are like, isn't that why we have an athletic director to make this decision to play or not? Why is it our problem? I mean, you got nobody on the same page at a lot of schools. You have some coaches, I believe, that don't want to play because they're not ready. I mean, Minnesota just got back to campus. And here's what I hope happens this weekend. I hope the green light's given for those who want to play to be able to play and then figure out the schedule.
I think that'd be great. And I think people would probably, at this point, and again, I said this last week, everything just seems like an exhibition anyway, right? It just doesn't seem like a real season. Baseball doesn't seem real. The NFL, I know that didn't have any feel last night.
It was
the only thing
odd.
that seems to have come off well has been hockey. But this whole thing with, play a home and home. Who's in? Okay, we've got 8 teams that want to play. All right, home and home. And if you don't want to play at your home, we'll meet you in Indy. And based on what I read today, Nebraska is prepared to play games at home with the amount of rapid testing that that has been talked about. I think they said we could handle 2 teams on game day. Well, that sounds to me like Nebraska's preparing to host games, and not go play in some bubble. But if Rutgers wants to play but doesn't want anybody in New Jersey, and we'll play a home game in Indy. All right, well, let's get it done. And I'm sure Nebraska would, load up a yellow school bus and have Brian George drive him there. And next thing you know, you got a game. But I think at this point, if you said who's all in, okay, we're playing home and away. Let's get 10 games in or 12 games in, and let's just call it a season. And let's not even keep score. What the hell? Let's just play.
I'm interested to see what transpires. We all are. And does the Big Ten and Commissioner Warren, does it have to be all 14 schools that opt into play? Because remember, we're talking a month ago, Nebraska was getting slapped because they wanted to go explore the opportunity to play if the Big Ten wasn't going to play. Same with Ohio State. Those are the 2 schools that were bold about doing that. Iowa wants to ball. Penn State does. I know Barry Alvarez wants to kick off. I would think Harbaugh in Michigan should be able to get the green light. I think Tom Allen, everyone's junior high gym teacher, said, you know what, let's play ball. He wants to ball. I don't know where I look at Sparty, I look at Brom, and I look at Fleck. I look at those 3 schools, and to be honest with you, I don't know where Northwestern's at. I mean,
don't forget Rutgers in Illinois or Maryland, because I know they're easy to forget.
They don't want to play, dude. They're not
right,
ready,
exactly.
And they're infected. I mean, just
but you know what?
Watch.
So those schools that want to play, I'm sure that if you put Scott and all of his peers in a room together, and Bill Moose and all of his peers that want to play, you could hammer out some type of a schedule. And like I said, if it's got to be home and home or West teams play a couple of games against each other, fine. This just seems like everything is an exhibition at this point. And if you don't want to play, then lace them up in January or February and put your games together, and then go play the MAC, go play the Mountain West, and whatever other conferences. Go play Pac-12 schools, and go have your spring season, and fill out your schedule that way. But we're going to move forward because we want to, and in Nebraska's case, economically, we need to, and then hopefully it all passes muster with Desmond Howard.
Clearly. Well, and last thought here, Bill, you've had a number of national columnists, and I know you've, in your career, you've had conversations. We've had them on Average Joe sports shows of yesteryear, but you just seem to have some national journalists that are just hell-bent on trying to shoot this down. And Twitter's a cesspool, but it's gotten really personal. And you have a lot of fan bases going off on the Dennis Dodds, Pat Forty's, Nicole Arbach's. They're all taking arrows, man. And I think it's gotten personal by some of the writers in their responses and what they're writing. They're trying to deliver information, but they're also, I think, trying to craft a narrative.
There's no question about that. And that's really kind of the dirty secret about how some of this works. When it comes to, nowadays it's clicks, but, some of these pregame shows, and look, I've worked thousands of them in my career, and I know people who have worked thousands of them, and you will have people on these sets, and it's like, you'll have these pre-productions meetings and say, who believes this? Well, I kind of do, and I kind of do too. Well, are you leaning one way or the other? Well, I guess I could be more anti-Nebraska, let's say. All right, well, then you do that, Desmond. And then, Kirk, you say this, and then Lee, just say something coherent, we'll back you up. And then David Pollack. And that's really universal. And if somebody has a really hardcore opinion on it, then they'll let them go off on it. And okay, who wants to counter that? That's how a lot of it works. A lot of it is scripted or planned out, or, there's a lot of pro wrestling. Pro wrestling might be more real than some, debate shows on television.
That's
all
fair.
Right. And I think that's, in part what you see. I'm watching, actually I shouldn't say I watch, because I don't watch a lot of game day and haven't for almost 20 years. But, you've got Desmond Howard, 3-4 weeks ago, saying Nebraska needs to be kicked out of the conference and you should not play. Yet game day goes on with college football, and he's there analyzing conferences that are going ahead and playing. well, if he doesn't think Nebraska and the Big Ten should be playing, then shouldn't you stand on something and say, well, I'm not going to dignify these other conferences either by playing. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
It's about consistency.
So trust me, a lot of those things are like watching pro wrestling, and they figure it out, the PTIs, and they're around the horns, and it's who's got this opinion, who believes in it more, and who can argue for it best. Okay, that's the direction that we're going to go. And that's the way it is. Bill
Dolman's with us. Billy D, we'll check in next Friday. Be safe.
Don't tell anybody, though, because that's a bit of a secret.
You take care, buddy. Thanks for the time today.
Go Big Red.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Pretty powerful moment as Barrett Rood remembers 9/11, and then our conversation with a survivor who escaped the South Tower back on 9/11, Sujo John.
So I was a freshman in college. I had an 8 a.m. English class that I went to. My routine was usually I went to the English class, and sometimes I'd come home and get a little nap, flip the TV on, and obviously saw the news. I think it was Peter Jennings was already starting his broadcast. My immediate reaction was obviously shock, like everybody else, anger, sadness. And then after that, you didn't really know what to do. I think that was what I remember the most is nobody really knew how to react to something like that because it was something so unique for our time. The tunnel walk was one of the most memorable ones I'll ever have in my lifetime. We had some servicemen and a fireman lead us out. The fireman was by himself and he had a single flag. I remember the crowd had a huge buzz about it, and it was really cool for me as a player to be out there on the field watching those guys, the servicemen, lead everybody out there with their own flag. Something I'll remember. With the 9/11 anniversary approaching, I think it's important that we never forget the impact that it made on us as a nation, but also how it brought us closer together.
It's a day of remembrance, September 11th, and we have a survivor's story, and welcome in with Sujo John. Sujo, thanks for a few minutes. It's been a few years since we've spoke. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It is definitely one of those days where we reflect and think about what happened to America. It's hard to believe. It almost feels like it happened maybe a year or two ago.
Sujo, take us through your story if folks are unfamiliar with September 11th, 2001, not only how the day started for you, but the miraculous survival that you and your wife experienced.
That day started off as a beautiful day in New York City. In fact, it was a great week. Schools had just opened, and it was a beautiful, clear, cloudless day that morning, and then everything changes forever. I would work on the 81st floor of the North Tower. My wife, Mary, she would work on the 71st floor of the South Tower. We both working in the building, and around that time, she was 4 months pregnant. And we are so looking forward to the birth of that child. That morning, I left home around 7:15 in the morning, head out into New York City. I make my way to the 81st floor and got busy with work that morning. At about 8:48, in fact 8:46, that's when I hear this incredible explosion. That was American Flight 11 flying coast to coast from Boston to LA, carrying over 10,000 gallons of jet fuel. This plane comes crashing into our tower. The major impact was on the 90th and above, but because of the angle at which the plane crashed into the towers, part of the wing of the plane tears into our floor. Fire breaks on our floor. The smell of jet fuel was so intense. The heat was so intense, and as we look up, we could see a huge crater. We can actually see 10 floors directly above us. So we start fighting our way to the fire, looking for a way to get out of the building. We find a stairwell, and we start running down that stairwell, only to be joined by thousands of people from all these floors. But I'm thinking about my wife, who works on the other tower, and we had left home separately. Ever since she was pregnant, she would sleep a little longer and then join me in the towers, but I knew she had left home for work, so I'm trying to reach her through my cell phone. I borrowed the phones of all the people running down the stairwell with me, but cell phones would not work. And then we hear another explosion, and all those who are listening to me right now, you remember seeing that on your television sets. That was the second plane crashing into the second tower. The moon was the noise was so intense. So I continued my descent down with a very heavy heart. But I get to the 43rd or 44th floor, and I saw this picture of this incredibly brave firemen and policemen, one by one, making their way up. And if I could, I just want to pause there for a moment, because the story of 9/11, in a way, it's about these men, the bravest of America, who showed the world what this country is made up of. When there's tragedies that happen in our community, when there's shootings going on, it's these people that step into this place of danger, wanting to make sure that people like me are around to be sharing our story. And I hope today, especially in America, all across America, that we as a nation will take it seriously what a law enforcement does. I'm appalled that we now live in America where authority is not respected and policemen are treated so horribly across this country. Just a few days ago, I was speaking somewhere and a policeman came up and said, I appreciate what you said from the platform, because we live in a place of fear. I mean, policemen are just targets. I just want to say all lives matter in America, and I'm just so appreciative of our policemen and firemen and EMT staff that every day step into places of danger. But anyway, we passed all those men that morning saying, you guys are the real heroes. God be with you. We continue to descend down. It took me an hour and 20 minutes to come down 81 floors. I'm on the plaza level, bodies and body parts of people that have jumped out of the building, the fuselage of the plane lying there. And it was just a picture of death, a picture of just horror. And that's when I felt like, what if I walk towards the South Tower from the concourse level? If my wife has not made her way up, what if she's somewhere near a building? And that's when, in a way, my story begins. I'm walking towards the South Tower, and from the concourse level, that's when the unthinkable happens. The South Tower begins to implode and going down. I was with 15, 20 people, and that's when, for the first time in my life, I find myself walking to the valley of the shadow of death. So my faith is something that I really leaned on that morning, and I said, God, if I die, where will I go? And I had this peace that if I were to die, I would go to make this place called heaven. 20 people that are with me, I asked them to call upon the name of Jesus. We prayed for a few minutes, the deafening noise of this building going down, and then we were buried. I was trapped in debris, thought I was going to die, could not breathe, but then I feel someone pulled me, and it turned out to be an FBI agent. We both started pulling each other. We couldn't breathe, but we saw a faint red light through the smoke and through the ash. We started crawling and feeling our way towards the light. It's a flashing light that was coming out of an ambulance. That led us out of the pit. This man runs back. The North Tower collapsed on him. He's actually the only FBI agent to have died that day. So I'm out of the debris. Both the towers have collapsed, and I've given up hope about my wife. Dust, smoke, ash rising out of ground zero, and it's been several hours since the planes have crashed in. New York City had been turned into a war zone, and I'm thinking, God, why did you spare my life? For sure, my wife is dead. And now, as I'm thinking those thoughts, my cell phone begins to ring for the very first time that day, and it's my wife on the other side, and I had just given up hope about her, but miraculously, God had, preserved her life. She was saved. She gets on the last train that made its way that morning into the towers. By then, the North Tower is hit. She's pushed out of the building. She sees men and women jumping out of the building, bodies landing around her. She sees a second plane crash in her tower, and she thought I could be one of them that's jumping out of the building. A girl grabs her and says, you have to live for this child you're carrying. And takes her, my wife from that place, takes her to an apartment in Manhattan and stays with her till she was able to reach me. So that's our story of how God, in a miraculous way, spared our lives, and life did not make sense to us that day, and then many weeks and months that went on. So many people had to die, and the question was, God, why were we spared? And then my faith is something that I've really leaned on since that day, and I began to realize life on earth is short. No one knows the appointed time or day, and there will be that appointed day that every human being will have. We're here today, we could be gone tomorrow, but what's important is when we go through the trials of life and we go through things in life, and everybody has a story. Those that are listening to me, all of us have a story. Someone's story this morning is about health, someone's is about marriage. What's important is when you go through your story, you better have a family to hold on to, a faith to lean on, and a country to put your feet on. And that's what I've learned through my story. 3 things that I lean on completely to help me go through the storms of life.
Sujo John, surviving 9/11, Hail Varsity Radio. You were on the first tower. You were on the 81st floor. You got out. You made your way to the second tower. It collapsed. You were buried in debris. You were saved by the one FBI agent that perished on 9/11. as you look back and this day comes year in, year out, how are you able to reach out and provide comfort to others who did lose loved ones?
Every now and then my paths will cross with someone who lost a loved one. And not only was I lost a loved one on 9/11, but even more importantly, number-wise, I've met so many family members of those that lost a member who served in the military in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Sure.
And many of them actually enlisted in the military because of what 9/11 happened. And it's very hard when I meet those family members. I met widows, I met children, and it's a difficult moment, and all I can tell them is thank you. And all I can hope and pray and rally America is that we support those that wear these uniforms. We support our heroes of this country, but we also realize that the threat of radical Islam is real. And I often feel that's kind of my pain. That's kind of the thought that I look back as 9/11 approaches. After 9/11, we never thought we would have a president who would go weak on the war against terrorism. We thought our president, our Congress will do all they can to stop terrorist attacks from happening. And now you see ISIS. They have morphed into something bigger than Al-Qaeda. And, Al-Qaeda was around before 9/11, and we didn't do much before 9/11 to take out Al-Qaeda. And now we have ISIS, 14 years post 9/11. The world is dealing with ISIS that has 50% of Syria with them, a big chunk of Iraqi territory with them. They're in Nigeria. They are in parts of Egypt. So it's a force that we have to deal with. And now this refugee crisis, there's going to be Arabs and people from that part of the world coming to America. And I just worry, are we safe? Are our borders safe enough? Because we cannot take this enemy lightly. They have only one mission, to destroy America and to destroy Israel. And if we are not on our guard, we could be under attack again.
Sujo John with escape to the 81st floor of Tower 1, a survivor on September 11th. He shares his story. Sujo, a few minutes left. What has life been like since for you with your wife and with your child?
Great question. Thank you. My wife was pregnant at that time with boy, and now she's 3 years of age, and that's a miracle story because my wife inhaled all that stuff, and we were told to abort the baby, and we decided to go through with that pregnancy. So it's a great pro-life story. He's an athletic, great kid. We've had 2 other kids since then, and I walked away from the corporate world post 9/11. God started opening doors, and for me, it was important to share my faith. So that's what I do across America, around the world. And these last 6 years have been very special. I was rescued on 9/11, and then my life mission now is to go into the red light districts of the world and rescue women that are trapped in human trafficking. I remember being in one of the brothels in India and seeing 37,000 girls trapped in cells and cages, and it hit me at that moment that I was rescued physically, I was rescued spiritually, and I need to be in a mission to rescue. So we're now pulling out girls in Eastern Europe from sex trafficking. We're pulling girls in Asia, and we operate safe houses in Europe and in Asia, and it's just amazing to see these life stories being rewritten. And our work is called You Can Free Us, and that's kind of my mission. God has given us a platform to speak with my story, but I use that as a platform to raise resources so we can go and rescue some lives.
Sujo, how can folks get in touch with you and your organization?
They can go to youcanfree.us. That's youcanfree.us, or if they just Google my name, something could come up. And thank you for asking. There's 37 million people caught up in slavery, and I believe with all my heart that there's a mandate upon this generation to end this evil of trafficking, modern day slavery. It cannot go on, and people who want to do something let's get in the game and end this evil.
Sujo, blessings to you, your family. Thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. God bless you guys.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, and excited to talk with the head coach for Lincoln East football, Coach John Gingery. Coach, off to a 2-0 start. How you doing? How you navigating the school year, first and foremost?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's different, Chris. Everything we're doing now is different, and with the Zooming and halftime and social distancing, and everything is totally different than it's ever been before. So it's an adjustment. I mean, it's and we approach it. This could be our last game. Every game we take, we're not going to take for granted just because we never know.
How has that adjustment been with your kids? I mean, you have put up a ton of points on offense. You've been really good on defense. But let's go back to this summer, Coach, and just give us a little bit of a description of some of the leadership that's been exhibited by your kids.
Yeah, the tough part is the limited numbers that we had this summer and opportunities to get them in the weight room working out. I mean, just contact was very, very limited. So, when the season started, we were fortunate enough to get a couple weeks of camp in at the end of July. But it wasn't everybody. I mean, you just didn't have that full contact you normally have. So really everything is more condensed, and it felt like we were always behind trying to get everything where it needed to be. So it was an adjustment that way.
How's the attitudes been for the kids as they work towards hoping that there would be kickoff? I know that they're excited that they've been able to get 2 games in, but what type of steadying influence have you been able to provide for them?
Well, it's been great. Kids are just excited just to have the opportunity. I mean, practices have been good. They've been spirited. We've had some really good practices. We've had some, the turnout for the game for the kids has been good that way. But it hasn't, that part of it hasn't changed. They're just happy to be playing sports.
John Gingery's with us. East football on ESPN Lincoln tonight as Norfolk comes to town. Coach, who are folks going to be listening for tonight with your team? Give folks kind of a preview, if you could, with what you got. I know Carter Glenn's been on the roster for quite a while, but you also have Noah at quarterback, and this kid, man, Noah Walters has been pretty special for you, hasn't he?
Yeah, he really has. And being a junior, he's really stepped up and given us some good leadership at that position. But like you said, we've got Austin Snyder and Cooper Erickson, Kendrick McCray, and we have a number of receivers that have played a lot of football for us. So any one of those kids could go off at any time if Noah puts the ball in the right place. Billy Stevenson, a running back, started last year, so we have a lot of returners. Quentin Adams on defense, Grant Springer on defense, Noah Fisher, and a lot of the same names on defense that were on offense. So Gigi Creighton up front and Jacob Ryan. A lot of kids played a lot of football for us last year. So, you can hear a lot of names that were on the field last year.
Coach Gingery's with us here on ESPN Lincoln, previewing East and Norfolk tonight. So you've got that returning experience, and some of the kids are seniors, some of them are juniors, but you had a bit of a young team last season that really kind of performed well for you. And, man, the momentum's carried over. And what do you like most? What's a key trait about this team collectively that you think is pretty nice?
Well, I think they like each other. they get along real well. The camaraderie is good. They push each other. That part of it is they hold each other accountable, and that part of it is huge. And so as far as leadership, we have a whole bunch of seniors that are bringing leadership to the table. And it's through their actions, I think, that gives us the kind of performance that we're looking for on the field and off the field as far as that goes.
Give me a sneak peek into this NASCAR offense. There's been tempo. It's one thing to want to do tempo. It's another thing to execute it, and you guys have been able to do that.
Yeah, I think it can work both ways, as you know. I mean, if you're 3 and out, your opponents have the ball right away. So if we can get the tempo up and running, I think it works in our favor. The kids say it's a lot tougher on the defense than it is on the offense. So, the splits, the spreading, the routes, all those things work together, and it helps us get things going. If we're in a lull, we jump into NASCAR and kind of pick the pace up a little bit, and it works in our favor.
What percentage would you say you've done NASCAR? Not to get too super technical or specific, but has it been a spark? Has it been that necessary spark?
Yeah, it really has. I think we run it about 50% of the time. So once we get in, and you know what, if we start slow and it's not working, we don't stay in it very long. We jump right back out of it and get into our spread offense. So if it's on, we stay with it, and if it's a good thing for us, you know, we may run it for quite a while. So it's been about 50% of the time right now. But with the kids we have receiving the ball and throwing the ball, obviously, it makes it pretty tough on defenses.
Coach Gingery, what'd you learn about your kids, or what'd they show you last week? Papio South, tight ball game, tough ball game. There were some ups and downs, some thrills, and some disappointment. But man, what a finish for you guys.
Well, I think the resilience. You know, I challenged them at halftime. I mean, we gave up a pick six and another interception, and we had the roughing the kicker that kept the drive alive. I think there was 3 drives that we gave them an assist on. I said, hey, we got to stay with this. We're going to be okay, and we'll put points on the board, but we just can't keep making the same mistakes we've been making. And fortunately, they came out and played pretty darn well in the second half. And as you said, Papio South's a good team. They're physical, and they run a great zone offense up front, and they were tough. It was a good game for us. We learned a lot.
What's stuck out about Norfolk? They've only had one game, but what impressions have they left you from film study this week?
Well, I think, you know, the one thing, Tom Olson, I mean, he's a great coach. He's been doing it for a long time, and he knows what he's doing, and they're resilient. You know, against Bellevue East, they stayed with it. Obviously, I think Columbus is a lot better team than people give them credit for being, and they're going to win a lot of games this year. So, but I think the fact that they just keep coming at you. They don't slow down. They blitz a lot. They run a lot of different things on their offense. Their no-huddle offense, too. So you got to be ready for multiple facets on both sides of the ball.
What's a concern or a point of emphasis this week with Norfolk as you got ready?
Well, I think just stay in the course.
Okay.
And we want to go out and we want to establish ourselves early. We want to play better defense, no turnovers. You know, we don't want to give them a lot of opportunities because, as I said, I think they're well coached, and if you give them a lot of opportunities, they're gonna hurt you.
John Gingery's with us, head coach Lincoln East, and it's always great to chat with Coach Gingery. Norfolk and East kick off tonight, and you'll hear that here on ESPN Lincoln a little bit before 8. Coach, you're fantastic. You're so much fun to chat with. I really appreciate what you do for the kids and what you've done for Lincoln football for a number of years, and we look forward to seeing you tonight. Thanks for the time today.
Well, I appreciate you guys. I mean, we appreciate you putting the games on and putting in the time as well, Chris. It means a lot to the kids, and obviously now a lot to the fans that can't come to those games. So thank you for what you do, buddy.
Coach, you take care. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Friday, weekend edition tomorrow morning at 7. Myself, Mark Cranack, you or Damon tomorrow.
It's Elijah Herblin.
It's Elijah Herbal. He is just spending the night. Good show today, and thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow we will get after it again. Some more news and thoughts from ESPN.com on the vote. Real quick, though, about moving in 2020. The place to go, West Blue Realty. That's who you call. They specialize in residential home sales in Lincoln and the surrounding communities. And if you're moving in 2020, listen, the folks you need to reach out to, West Blue Realty. For a limited time, you mentioned Hail Varsity. West Blue Realty can provide you up to $1,000 on the closing of your next home purchase. Tom Luby is there for you at 402-540-3768. Kelly Hofschneider, 402-202-2312. It pays to work with West Blue, westbluerealty.com. Get an appointment set today to see Tom or Kelly. 1120 K Street, Suite 200. Okay, the latest, and Adam Rittenberg reporting this along with Heather Denich. And you have kind of a convoluted process. So per the report from Adam Rittenberg and Heather Denich, You got the Big Ten Medical Subcommittee will present options for a possible return to football in the fall. So with the report, 8 of the 14 presidents and chancellors will see the presentation and then call another meeting. We're going to have a meeting to have a meeting. They'll call another meeting with all 14. And if the 8 like what they hear, maybe they move forward and play. So there's 2 ways to screw this up. I am not meeting guy. I despise meetings. If I'm told to go, I go, and I'll shut up about it. But the point is, man, they wear you out. They just do. And now when I get 8 stuffed shirts, well, let me take that back. I'm going to hold Ohio State, Nebraska, and Iowa's people out of this stuffed shirt circle because they want to play football. But the other 11, the stuffed shirts, maybe they're not all stuffed shirts, but the majority of them that shut this thing down 11-3 got no love for you. So they may say, sure, let's play ball in the fall, but they may need 17 meetings to decide that. That makes me sad and crazy at the same time.
My question is, there's 8 attending, 6 are the not attending. Mm-hmm. So are those the 6 that have decided that they already are fine with this plan, or is it 6 that have decided that, hey, no matter what, we don't want to play football this fall? Who are those 6
Just give me 8 teams. Give me 8. First 8 in, good. Go. Bang.
But I mean, you need the 70% according to the Big Ten bylaws. So my question is, is Nebraska...
You need 60%.
Which is...
9
votes, excuse me. So the thought is, do we already have 3 in Nebraska, Ohio State, Iowa?
What happens if, instead of saying no, what if you abstain?
I'd like that.
Yeah.
If Maryland and Rutgers and whoever else don't want to play football, abstain and let the schools who do want to play football vote.
And
listen, like that. I'd love that.
And I'll even pay you for your no vote or your yes vote, even if you opt out. Take a piece of the pie. All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow at 7. Check us out at 8 o'clock. East Football, Norfolk on ESPN, Lincoln, ESPNLincoln.com to stream us. Talk to you at kickoff.